Everyone. This is the video for your last major project, which is the Writing to Analyze project or analysis. Now, analysis tends to probably be one of my favorite projects. It's also my favorite sort of means for rhetoric, essentially, as your job is to sort of investigate a topic and look for patterns. And through those patterns, you're going to try to convince or persuade your audience of the particular findings that you have. You're not necessarily trying to completely convince them one way or another that your way is definitively right or their way is definitively wrong, but that with the evidence that you gathered, that there's a way to look at this particular topic through a specific lens that maybe they might have missed or maybe they haven't noticed. And I'll give you a few examples later on in the video so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. And so essentially with this project, you have your options for project avenues as you always do. The first option, as always, is an essay. And if you decide to produce an essay for this project, it will need to be a minimum of 1,000 words. So the first two projects, you were looking at a 750 word essay. Now you need to produce at least 1,000 word essay. The other options that you can choose will be the PowerPoint or Prezi. And as with the first two projects, if you decide to do a PowerPoint or Prezi, you should have some sort of voiceover to help sort of guide the reader and go beyond simply what your bullet points are discussing. You can also develop a Weebly or a website, which was the previous alternative for the last project with Exploration. Or with the new project, you can develop a podcast. And if you decide to develop a podcast, it should be a minimum of 10 minutes. Why I like the podcast option? One, because I love listening to podcasts because I can listen to my car, I can listen to them at home, wherever I have free time, I can listen to a podcast. But you can also incorporate sound, you can incorporate music, you can also interview or talk or have conversations with other people that would like to get in on your analysis for your project. And so, if you decide to produce a podcast, it should be a minimum of 10 minutes. Now, I've had students who have done podcasts that went up to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then one was even an hour where they had a roundtable discussion of a topic and they had 4 or 5 people get in on the conversation. And it was actually very engaging and quite interesting to listen to. Now, regardless of the type of project you choose, you will need to have a minimum of 2 properly cited sources, MLA format, as always. One thing I do want to reiterate that I was addressing to some of you in your rough drafts is that when you first establish your source in your project, always make sure to introduce your source. According to Time Magazine, according to the New Yorker, according to Fox News, according to CNN, whatever you are using for your source, make sure to address if there's an author, where the source comes from, provide the source material, and then properly cite the source in parentheses after you're given information. Anything that doesn't belong to you, you should properly cite. This project for the rough draft will be due Sunday, July 19th, and that will be worth 15 points. And then the final draft of this project will be Sunday, July 26th, which happens to be the last day of our summer class. So you're on to the last project. You will have more than enough time. You're given about 3 weeks for this project at this point. But there is going to be other work in between. So my advice to you will be to try to get these things done early as you can. Then you don't have to worry about it. One thing I will say is that for that due date of the final draft, the 26th of July, there are no exceptions. If I get that turned in late, it is an automatic 0, as we have a very short time window to turn grades around and put them in for final grades. So please make sure that you get those turned in on time. Now, for this project, as I was saying, there's a few different ways that people like to analyze topics. And so I've had a variety of different students give me analysis. And at its core, what I'm looking for this project is really a one-sided argument, meaning I'm not asking you to find opposing point of views or counterclaims. I'm really just looking for you to make a particular argument about your topic. And so, a few examples that I can give you here are, like I said, when you are doing analysis, your goal is to find a pattern with something and make some sort of argument about it. So, for example, in sports, for those of you who are sports fans, I'm a big fan of basketball, football, baseball, MMA, mixed martial arts. And so, in each of these different areas, you have people who do analysis. You have them on ESPN, their sports analysis. So, for example, in MMA or the UFC, post fight or pre fight, you usually have your analytics, your professionals, your former fighters give insight or analysis into who they think that would win the fight, primarily based on the styles of the fighting percentages, the striking, the different sorts of stances that they take, their knowledge of different sort of fighting. That is all different sorts of analysis, looking at patterns of how people fight or have fought in the past, and then try to extrapolate that or apply it to a current fight. In basketball, you always have the conversation of who is the greatest of all time. Typically, Michael Jordan is the standard, but based on modern analysis or analytics, you might say that the game is harder, the scoring is different, there's more people who take 3-point shots. So, how do you really base who's the greatest player of all time? And then, even in football, we have a huge sort of gaming system for fantasy football, and people who play fantasy football know that analysis is constantly utilized in your different leagues to determine who you might draft, who's going to be the top scorer, how you differentiate between picking up a running back or picking up a wide receiver. That all goes into analyzing the skill set, the point value, all those different things that you can look into. Social media. There's a variety of different things people analyze when it comes to social media. I've had students analyze different social media platforms to see which type of demographics use Facebook opposed to Instagram, opposed to TikTok, opposed to Snapchat, opposed to Twitter. I've had people do social media analysis for dating sites and analyze this particular dating site caters to these individuals, and this is a dating site that potentially finds better matches for these individuals. So your goal for this would be essentially to see how each of these sites works and operates, and then make some sort of argumentative claim to suggest Facebook is primarily designed for the group of 18 to 35-year-olds. They have over X amount of users, and they tend to be the most successful because they have a longer means of conversational posts opposed to Twitter, which is very fast paced with only a few short characters that you can utilize when making a tweet. Some current topics are protests. So I've had students who have done analysis for police brutality, for the Black Lives Matter movement. These are all current areas of discussion that you can analyze. So, for example, one student I've had has done different sort of examinations and analysis of police brutality in terms of whether they consider it to be systemic, meaning is there something wrong with the entire justice system, or is it strictly certain police precincts? Is it just isolated incidents? How can we sort of measure this and examine where the areas of problems might be? They've also looked at it from different aspects of protesting, where people have analyzed different movements: Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and sort of addressed, is this particular protest effective? Is this type of protest effective? Which type of protests tend to be the most effective, especially when it comes to making changes in our culture? Obviously, you can also analyze current medical situations. We're currently in a pandemic with COVID-19. And so, if we were to analyze the process of COVID, we might look at how different countries have handled the situation in contrast to the United States. We might look at how different states have handled the situation within our own borders and analyze the successes or analyze the ineffectiveness of some of these approaches. Now, one thing that you can do, as I was stating, this is a one-sided argument, is that you don't necessarily have to have a positive argument. You can analyze a state like Florida, and you might say that Florida has had one of the least effective approaches to the COVID pandemic, primarily because they opened up a lot of their areas without necessarily flattening the curve. Or you can look at Illinois, and you can say that Illinois is one of the more successful states that has approached this particular discussion, primarily because they had a bit more strict approach to it, and then kind of look at the patterns between the two states and address which one is more effective or ineffective. And then one other thing that students often do when they analyze is they look at their favorite movies, their favorite products, and then they try to address an analysis for a particular topic within that genre. So I've had students who have were big into cars, and they analyzed the sort of car culture that they come from. They look at areas that people might have overlooked in regards to the knowledge of cars, the type of cars that they're interested in, the value for certain cars. And so these are all things that you can analyze. I've had students do that with movies as well, where they look at different film genres, whether that's, comic book movies, whether that's action movies, whether that's romance movies, whether that's dramas, and they've analyzed the acting, they've analyzed the plots, they've analyzed the different sort of dynamics or themes in the film. And those are all different means of examination. Like I said, at the end of the day, your job will be to sort of bring to light some sort of aspect that maybe the audience might have missed. You're not trying to disprove them, you're not trying to make them feel wrong, or you're not trying to completely and definitively say that your side is right. But what you're trying to do is get your audience to look at your topic through a particular lens. And so, one thing I will suggest, reference the writing to analyze section on Blackboard, look at some of the essay examples, look at some of the student examples. Keep in mind this project, the rough draft, will be due Sunday, July 19th. So, you're actually seeing the video the week before the due date is for the rough draft. And then also keep in mind that the final draft will be due on Sunday, July 26th. So, you are getting a 3-week advance in this. Keep in mind that you do have other work that you will need to do in between this time to also help you understand analysis better. Keep in mind this project is worth 150 points. You have your 4 different areas that you can choose from in terms of an essay, a podcast, a website, or a PowerPoint or Prezi with audio voiceover. Essay needs to be a minimum of 1,000 words. Podcast should be a 10-minute minimum. The website should be at least 4 distinct pages, and your PowerPoint and Prezi should include some audio voiceover, at least 2 properly cited MLA sources, and again, this project in total is worth 150 points. I know I just dropped a lot on you guys, but one thing to always keep in mind is if you have questions, please, please, please email me, set up a conference, text me, call me, whatever you need to do. Some of you are doing an excellent job in keeping regular correspondence. I'm hoping that I'm helping you out in guiding you through some of these things. But other than that, if you're not proactive and you're waiting to the last minute, there's not much I can do for you. Other than that, keep up the good work and stay focused. We're almost at the end of the semester.